Hey y'all, I'm Elisa and I am the Scrappy Wife behind scrappywife.com, and today I have a Bible journaling process video for you. I'm going to be working in Genesis 2, adding in a few sermon notes that I took this past Sunday, and it'll be talking about the subject of marriage. And in Genesis 2, I'm going to use acrylic paints. Acrylic paints work fantastic in your Bible because they do not bleed through. They're great to work with and I really enjoy them, and I haven't used them in a while. So I have a lot of different colors picked out right here. I have an image in my head that I'm going to sketch out and then kind of go from there. I will put you all on fast forward and we'll see how it turns out. Let's go. I start out by sketching out the image that's in my head. I am in Genesis 24:25, and it says, "This is why a man leaves his father and mother and bonds with his wife, and they become one flesh. Both the man and his wife were naked, yet felt no shame." And I had this image in my head of a husband and wife kind of together, embracing, becoming one, and I by no means consider myself an illustrator, but I was going for an abstract image, so I thought I could probably freehand it, and it might look a little bit juvenile, but I'm okay with that. Like I said, it's an abstract idea, so I kind of just sketch it out knowing that I'm going to plan on covering up the pencil lines with acrylic paint. Using a couple of different kinds of acrylic paint. First is the Jane Davenport acrylics, and I really like her colors for skin tones. She has a lot in that line that you can kind of mix and create your skin tones. So I'm using that for skin tones, and then I'm using several colors from Target's Handmade Modern line, which I like a lot. I like the packaging. I think the little pots of paint are easy to work with. You'll see me pull out several and I paint from the lids, which works out really nicely for me, and I just like the array of colors. The one drawback to this line of acrylic paints is that they tend to have a satin finish, which can be sticky if it is pressed together a lot. So in my art journaling pages, when I've used this acrylic paint and the paint is pressed against itself, it tends to stick. I haven't had that issue in my Bible journal. I also tend to have thinner layers in my Bible journal than I do in my art journal. So I think that that helps the stickiness kind of resolve itself. But just something to be aware of. These are pretty affordable from Target. And like I said, I love the huge array of colors. I don't like mixing colors necessarily because I don't have a lot of time for that. It's not something I'm great at. So I'd rather just have the color I'm looking for at hand. As you saw me working with the pinks, I'm trying to create an ombre effect and blending these paints together. Acrylic paint is not quite as easy to blend as watercolor, but it can still be done. And the idea is that the colors are blending to become a purple color. Blue and pink are going to create purple and create the bonds of marriage as the two become one flesh. An art instructor might tell you otherwise, but when I am working with acrylic paints, I like working with short brush strokes. And the reason is I kind of like the texture it creates. You can see my paintbrush fell apart there, so oops for that. And it's supposed to be a good quality paintbrush, but oh well. Anyway, I like to do short paint strokes. I like the texture it creates as I'm trying to make these kind of meld together. I do still want to see the brush strokes in what I'm creating, and it's a personal preference. It's just what I like to see when there is acrylic paint in my Bible, and so that's what I go with. So you'll see me kind of doing a lot of short little strokes here and then trying to elongate it and blend the colors. When you're wanting to do the blending, you do have to work pretty fast because acrylic paint dries pretty quickly, which is another reason why it's great in your Bible. It doesn't bleed through and it dries pretty quickly. And you have to work fast. So I'm trying to blend quickly, get it all in the right areas. And then you'll see me, I kind of go back through and I want to just pull out her dress even more. And you can make a few little changes here and there afterwards. But really when the paint is wet, that's when it's easiest to make those changes. Now I'm adding the hair to both of my figures here, and hair is hard for me, and I'm using brunette because both my husband and I are brunettes, but mine is not quite this dark, but that's okay. It's what I had on hand. And hair, I just tend to over stylize the hair, if that makes sense, but that's okay. I tried to use the very tip of my brush and have a few little strands kind of sticking out so it looked a little bit more natural. As I was finishing up the main image, I decided I wanted my heart to radiate outwards, and so I'm taking really short brush strokes, like I said before, and kind of pulling it out in a loose manner, showing the pinks and the blues still mixing together to create the bonds of marriage and how a wonderful marriage can radiate out into the world. I love how this image turned out. I'm super pleased with it, and it totally represents what I was thinking through during this sermon. Now here's where I come back. The image is dry and I'm coming back and trying to blend the blue a little bit more. I'm still not totally pleased with it, but at some point you just have to call something done and let it go. And when I'm painting, and it seems especially with acrylics, I have a hard time letting it go because you can layer and make some changes. And so I'm trying to do a little bit here, shaping it a little bit closer to what I was going for, and in the end I am pleased with how it came out, and I just had to tell myself, all right, stop working on this, time to work on the next part of the project. I am going to add the title now in hand lettering, and the title is going to be One Flesh, because that was really one of the big concepts I got out of the sermon, and I'll share my sermon notes in just a moment. I am sketching out the lettering in pencil first, and then I will go back over it with my lettering pen. I will link all the supplies that I use below so you can see which lettering pen I use and the acrylic paints and things like that. I have really been enjoying working on my hand lettering in recent months, and it has made me really excited to add a little bit more of it into my projects. It's not perfect, but that's okay. Handmade is better than not made at all, and I love that my handwriting is in my projects for my kids to see at a later time, and it's really nice to be able to incorporate just bits of you into the things that you are making. Here I am tracing with my lettering pen. One of the tenets of hand lettering is making harder strokes, or the downward stroke is thicker than the upward stroke, which is a thinner line. I'm going back and recreating some of my downward strokes to make them a little bit thicker so they stand out even more, because I want that part to be nice and bold. And then I will come back in and add some of the journaling notes that I took during church. Here I'm going to add a few sermon notes that I jotted down on Sunday's sermon. And again, the topic was unhacking marriage, and these are principles that are talked about in the Bible for really investing in your marriage for the long run. Number 1 is embrace the mystery of sacred oneness. Number 2 was love your unique equal in order to discover your complement. Number 3, use the superglue of marriage. Number 4, welcome creative conflict but send bitterness packing. And number 5, commit to a lifelong covenant and fight for it. This was a really great sermon to listen to with my husband, and if you are interested, I will link it down below. It's part of a whole series on unhacking the Bible and unhacking parts of our lives. So I will link it below if you're interested. I really like using these gel pens because I like the fact that they are erasable. So if I make a mistake, I can fix it right there. You do need to be aware though, they are heat activated, meaning they disappear when they heat up or if they get wet. So be careful where you're using them in your Bible, and just know that there is a possibility that the notes might disappear. For me, if an accident happens, I'm not worried because I do have these notes in my separate Sermon Notes Traveler's Notebook. I'm adding a little finishing touch on the page with some acrylic paint splatters, and I grabbed the black acrylic paint. I tend to mix in a little bit of water so it splatters a little bit easier. Splattering that across the page always adds a nice little touch, but I ended up with a big glob of black right in between the man and the woman. So I dabbed that up. It came up pretty nicely. And the last step will be adding on some tabs. And I have about 1 million paper tabs. I don't know if I'm the only one from when Illustrated Faith was first getting going and tabs were all the rage and there were like a million tabs. So I have all these tabs and this was a great opportunity for me to use some in my stash, but then you can see me fussing. I wanted to do this layered effect and then I'm not sure what happened. So I fuss and I try to move things around and I pull up this tab, put back down. See, I don't want to cover up the woman's head. I switch them around. I like the words, but I don't want to. Anyway, you can see me fuss around here for a minute. I end up trimming down this light pink tab to make it work and am happy with the ending results. To soften up the edge, I will add some gritted washi tape from Felicity Jane and also available in the By the Well for God shop, and I will call my page done. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It really does mean a lot to me and a lot to my channel when you take the time to do that and to leave comments below. I hope you have a fantastic day, and as always, keep it creative.